I'm here to listen. Why am I walking on this way?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Muse's AT Podcast, where you can relive my epic journey with me. This is Muse, and what follows is my Appalachian Trail story. Today's episode covers Monday, June 23rd, 2025. Today, we continue on towards our next trail town, the town of Caratunk. Ultimately, I'll only spend one night in Caratunk, getting back on trail and crossing the Kennebec on the day after I arrived. In this episode, you'll meet what I call the Caratunk crew, the folks that I met along this stretch. The other thing that goes on in this episode is I will actually read a little bit, this is the first time I'm really reading from it, my handwritten journal, and you're going to hear a little bit of reflection on what it was like to now be hiking without Wayfinder. And today's haiku is from April 19th, 2019. Steps along the path, unexpected encounters. The new blends with old. The picture I'm looking at here is a beautiful picture. And the entry will lead off talking about the picture a little bit too. This one's just amazing. I got to make sure that I get this one into the Instagram post. So this picture is looking out over a pond. And the pond is a perfect reflection of the cloudy sky above. There's a little bit of color in the clouds. So we're probably talking a little bit before sunset that this was taken. There's some trees in the background on the other side of the pond, a mountain pretty far in the distance. And then in the foreground, there's the land leading up to the pond, which is just a few rocks and some trees. And it's almost like this picture is framed by the overhanging trees and sort of the underbrush. And yeah, it really is a really good picture. All right, let's go into that entry. June 23rd, 2025. Taking it easy. Start, Moxie Bald Mountain Pond Lean-To. End, Stealth Campsite. Miles, 7.1. This picture is actually from Sunday night. This was my view as I set up my tent. There is a perfect tent site at this shelter that goes right up to the pond. I slept maybe 10 feet away. Because of this, I also got my first good view of the stars that night. They were magnificent. I had this shelter completely to myself, and so I laid out all my gear and clothing under the shelter to dry. It really didn't. And set up my tent, since that is my sleeping preference. Another thing from Sunday that I forgot in that entry, and this could have been in the wildlife update, the butterflies. During the road walk, there was a fun dynamic where groups of relatively large yellow butterflies, flocks, murders like crows, were bunched on the road, and when I walked near them, they would take flight and swirl around me. Happened 4 or 5 times. I was like a Disney princess. I am actually writing this entry on Tuesday night, the 24th. I had this idyllic plan for the top of Moxie Bald Mountain, which included writing this entry from up there. I was going to spread out clothes to dry, eat my breakfast. It would still be early, so I grabbed a light snack before breaking camp, and journal both here and in my handwritten journal. Maybe stay up there for a couple of hours before seeing what the day held after that. But the gnats had a different plan. I'm not even sure these were gnats. They were just a little too big, and I think they actually bit me. The second I set down my pack, that was covered. A different swarm came after me. So I sent a quick text to the family chat and got the heck out of there. So, Moxie Bald, you have beautiful views. And I'm finding that the bald rock up high is my favorite hiking surface, and there was plenty. But you got a bit of a pest issue. From there, the shelters were oddly spaced. The next one was just at the base of the mountain on the south side, so quitting time at noon. And the one after that was beyond 2 more mountains, and I didn't feel up for that. So I headed for that near shelter, thought to take a long lunch doing most of the things I planned for the mountaintop, and then hit about 3 more miles, hopefully finding a good stealth site between the ford so I could get that in this day, and the next mountain so it could be first thing tomorrow like today had been. I'd been at the shelter 2 hours, probably wrapping up that long lunch, when Frogger showed up. I'd been wondering when I'd see him, as I knew he took a later shuttle from the hostel so he could leave with Ribbit and Spicy. I hadn't met Ribbit and Spicy, but I'd met Frogger and assumed they'd all be pretty fast, and probably all catch me together. But Frogger was solo. We chatted for a good while, and he gave me some cheese that he was trying to eat or give away all before this warmer weather turned that bad. Smoked jalapeno Gouda. It was delicious. His mom had sent him a pound of cheese a couple days back. In talking, it sounded like, as I'd assumed, the three of them stayed in that great tent site where the bypass came back to the trail, 5 miles before the shelter I stayed in. Ribbit and Spicy were also trying to camp right after the ford like I was, but Frogger was pushing on to that further shelter, making an 18-mile day for him, in hopes of crossing the Kennebec the next day, Tuesday. Since I'm writing on Tuesday, I already know from the shelter log that he did make it to the shelter. I made it to my stealth site around 5:30. Took forever to hang my bear bag. 3 perfect hangs that all resulted in the branch falling as I hoisted the food. Crazy. I was heading into my tent when I met Michelle, who has been named Fuego. She guessed that I was Joe based on the content of my log entry where I ate lunch, and told me she was enjoying the haikus. She would camp somewhere near me that night. Getting into my tent at 6:30, mountains to climb tomorrow, I felt the oppressive heat of the day. Because of the way I'd timed the day, I'd really dodged it until then. I was already descending the mountain by 10 this morning, and I spent a lot of time either in the shelter or hiking in the shade since. But my tent was like a sauna. But I was determined to get to sleep early and hit about 12 over what was really 2 peaks the next day to get into Caratunk, the next town. All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear from the sponsors who help keep Muse's AT podcast on the trail. These are offerings that truly enhanced my thru-hike experience, so I'd really like you to check them out. Please look for and follow the links in the show notes to this episode. Looking forward to that lazy day on the couch, knocking down your Netflix queue and wondering what to wear? Quick answer, wear something else. Summit Ready Apparel is clothing built for those who scramble over jagged rocks, reach the peaks, and actually enjoy getting caught in a torrential downpour. If you're someone who doesn't mind the elements and has the grit to crush the next segment anyway, look no further than Summit Ready to match your restless trail spirit. Check out the catalog at summitreadyapparel.com and get ready for your next adventure. That's summitreadyapparel.com. Looking for your next great trail read? Walk Uphill is a powerful story about leaving the emptiness of modern corporate life behind and finding a completely new beginning on the Appalachian Trail. It's about discovering what life can look like when you embrace freedom, lighten your load, and take it step by relentless step. I actually read this book myself during a couple rest days in Gorham, New Hampshire, right after conquering the brutal terrain of southern Maine. I literally couldn't put it down. I read it from cover to cover in 2 days. The book chronicles the real-life events of the author, Bounce the Hiker, in a twisty, shocking, edge-of-your-seat story that even the most imaginative fiction writer couldn't make up. Just a quick content warning, there is definitely adult material in this book, so I wouldn't recommend buying it for your 10-year-old's birthday. But if you're looking for a gripping, raw trail adventure, I highly recommend Walk Uphill by Bounce the Hiker. You can find it easily on Amazon by searching Walk Uphill Book, or just click the direct link in the show notes of this episode. All right, we had talked about this before, how to some degree the journal entries I was writing for my at-home audience were a little bit of a filter. As it turns out, as it says in the entry, I wrote today's entry, the one for the 23rd, on Tuesday night, the 24th, which would have been at the Sterling Inn in Caratunk, as you'll find out. But I did write on June 23rd during that long break in the lunchtime shelter. And so I'm going to read from my physical journal. Now, I debated whether or not I actually wanted to read it because I think there is even a little bit of this that's honestly even a little bit unfair to Haley, but it's not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and go for it. But because I'm mentioning that, I do want to talk about, like, I did have, at least for a brief time, and we'll find out that it is a very brief time, a bit of a need to process Haley having left. And so you're going to get, again, slightly, but a little bit jaded in this entry, but I think it's, again, not too bad. I don't think I'm doing her a disservice by reading it. So here, from my personal journal, June 23rd, 2025, Monday, Bald Mountain Brook Lean-To, mile 136.7, Maine. I did my best. Truth is, I never had a chance of keeping Haley on trail. She's in too much of a hurry to be a grown-up. Hopefully her enthusiasm pays some dividends. I personally think it's a bit misguided. I think she did experience some healing out here. I hope she continues to seek healing, as I've told her. I've had bouts of sadness since she went home on Saturday. Not having her here creates a feeling of loss, but I suppose there is also added freedom. Scaled Moxie Bald Mountain today, which was awesome. At this point, I haven't seen another human in almost 24 hours, which is odd, but fine. It's been a good day so far. Taking an extended lunch break here at the shelter, and we'll try to go another 3 or so today and find a stealth site. So there you have that. I was sad. I don't know that that really hit me the previous day when I was doing all that road walking around the rivers and everything. It probably really did kind of hit me that morning when I, for the first time, woke up in the woods alone. But as you know from the online entry that we read, that wouldn't really last long. I wrote those words from the lunchtime shelter there. I guess it was Bald Mountain Brook Lean-To. And I would then finish up writing, and I would turn on my meditation app and just sit there meditating, getting ready to get back on trail. And I suppose I was actually at Bald Mountain Brook Lean-To for like 2 hours. So I was just kind of chilling this morning. You know, maybe I was a little down for parts of it, but really I was also kind of, well, like I said, chilling. And so I'm at this lean-to for like 2 hours, and I'm meditating and that's probably, it might be about 5 minutes left in that meditation track, something like that. I'm about to go take off and hit the trail again, but that's when Frogger showed up. And I just remember that was a really cool conversation. I think I talked about it a bit in last episode, so I'm not going to really go into too much detail. Plus, it's also actually pretty well documented in this entry. And then later that night, I would meet Fuego, and the next morning would end up meeting Spicy and Ribbit. So my being alone without Haley didn't last long. It was really basically that one day, and I would end up hiking with a group for basically the next week, all the way into the hostel of Maine at Carabasset Valley. The bear hang thing, that was crazy. It was, I described it in the entry, but like 3 times, perfect shots, like first toss up into the tree. My rope goes over the branch that I wanted it to. I don't even know if I had a more perfect toss any time else on trail than I did this night, 3 different times. And every single time as I start tugging on that rope, the branch just cracked and fell to the forest floor. And so I remember my first introduction to Michelle, one of the things I said was something along the lines of, try to ignore my terrible bear hang because my perfect ones all fell down or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but it was funny because I definitely compromised on the 4th one and just did a bear hang that was, again, like I mentioned when we were talking about bear hangs a little while ago, it was nicely away from me, but it wasn't going to really deter any bears from getting my food if it came down to that. A fun thing here as we meet Fuego, and I did not mention this last episode when I introduced Fuego, but this would be the first time that somebody introduced themselves to me, having been looking forward to meeting me because they were enjoying my haikus. That wouldn't happen a ton of times, 2 other times that I can think of, actually, but Fuego was definitely the first. The next time that happened would be Ben and Abe, who will meet in southern Maine, and then the last time that would happen would actually be Silly Putty at the Barn Hostel in Gorham. But a little bit of a funny, I guess, small anecdote about that. When I was just coming into Massachusetts is the first time I heard about Crooked Letter, and I heard this guy was looking for me, like trying to catch up with me, trying to meet me. And the funny thing is that I, because of these previous things, assumed it was that. Oh, he's digging the haikus or whatever. I would then end up later on sharing a lot of trail miles with Crooked Letter, so I got to ask him about this at one point in time, and he's like, no, that wasn't even on my radar. I just heard you were ahead of me and that you were somebody I was going to catch. So that was kind of funny. And with that, I think we'll wrap this one up right here tomorrow, going into the town of Caratunk. Until then, this has been Muse, and you've been listening to Muse's AT Podcast. Thank you for walking with me, and happy trails.
Here